Alright guys, well, this is going to be the last video that I do for YouTube today. This is something that I've wanted to share with a wider audience for a while. It's been on Patreon for a long time. So on Patreon, just in case you don't know what the platform is, it's a subscription model. There's different tiers. There's a $3, $10, $20, $100 tier. For each tier, you get different privileges, different photos, different videos. You know, we're still in post-production of the documentary, so when there's cuts, I put them up. There's a lot of raw footage from the documentary up there as well. This particular clip is, if you remember from the breakdown, or from the Pimping and Pandering series, I'd got arrested for pimping and pandering in, I believe, April of 2017. And, you know, to this day, I was never a pimp. You know, I've never made any money off prostitution, whether it be myself or anybody else. I've just always done it for free. You know, it's a convoluted situation, but I mean, those of you that have been following me for a while know what the deal is, and we go into it explicitly in the documentary. After I got arrested, you know, I really wanted to get out of it. We show all the interview footage and stuff in the film. You know, I was on federal probation at the time. I had just gotten out of the feds for the second time. That's when I was in Lompoc. That's when I met Big Meech. I had just gotten out. I'd been out a few weeks. And I ended up getting set up in a sting operation for pimping and pandering. Eventually, I got convicted of pandering, which is basically arranging a prostitution deal. What really happened is I was basically... I mean, I guess I did do that, you know, but the charge that it should have been is called protecting a prostitute, which is a misdemeanor and carries probation. Instead, I got pandering, which is mandatory minimum 3 years in state prison, and I got an additional 8 months in federal prison. Now, being on federal supervision at the time, when I got arrested, I was freaking out. My dad bailed me out, and ironically, you know, or paradoxically, however you want to look at it, when you get arrested by the state, if you're on federal supervision, there's nothing that automatically notifies them, which is bizarre. The state and federal systems don't always, you know, they don't always work together. You know, the state actually has a lot of resentment towards the feds and vice versa. You know, there's a lot of toe-stepping, whatever. I had learned that lesson the hard way when I got arrested for a DUI, non-conviction DUI. I wasn't drunk. That's what I went to prison for the second time. Got a non-conviction DUI. I told my PO at the time, I said, hey, I got in a car, because I went to jail. I got arrested. I blew a .06. So I got in a car accident. You know, I had a little bit to drink before, but I was definitely not drunk, and I was within the legal limit in California. Legal limit's .08. I was .06. I called my PO the day after I got out of jail, my federal PO, and I said, hey, I got in a car accident and I got a DUI. I kind of just like threw it in there. And he said, you're going to prison. And I was like, I'm going to beat the case. He's like, regardless, just the fact that you had cuffs put on you and that you're arrested for a new charge, it doesn't matter if you get convicted in the state or not. We have a lower standard for prosecution for violations. And he recommended a year in prison. I ended up getting 90 days on that second violation. But I actually went to Lompoc. I actually went to a yard. You know, I met Big Meech, which seems like a insane, you know, waste of resources to send me back to an actual prison yard. All the transportation, the housing, etc. for a non-conviction DUI. But whatever. They're trying to teach me a lesson. And at the time, I was completely strung out on alcohol and heroin. So, you know, maybe I needed a little wash and dry like that. I got out in 2017 and I caught this case, you know, within weeks of getting out. I think I got out March 25th. I got arrested for this case sometime in April. So when my dad bailed me out, I had him do it right away because, you know, it's the kind of thing where if I stayed in jail, the feds would find out I'm in jail because I wouldn't be showing up to check in with them. You know, I won't be getting drug tested, etc. And that's how they would find out. There's nothing that notifies them automatically. I learned that lesson the first time with the non-conviction DUI. If I hadn't said anything to my PO, I would have, because when I went to court for the DUI, the DA threw it out. They're like, this isn't a DUI, you're good. That was that. So if I had never told my PO, I never would have done those 3 months in federal prison on a violation, because he would have never known about it. So I learned my lesson the first time on that violation. When I got arrested for the pandering, that's a serious charge. Like I said, it carries a mandatory minimum 3 years in state. Now, I thought I was going to beat that as well. And looking back on it, I probably could have if I wasn't on federal probation. There was a lot of pressure with my federal PO because they could put me in prison anyways. They're like, sign! You know, they were like pressuring me to resolve the case in the state. After I got arrested and my dad bailed me out, I got bailed out immediately. My plan was not to tell my PO. I only had like 6 months left on probation, and then I was going to be off of federal supervision. I got sentenced to 5 years on my original case for conspiracy to distribute heroin. I served 4.5 years, almost 5 years on that. And then I had 4 years of supervision. So like basically 4 years of parole that followed it. And I think I was down to like the last 6 months or something when I caught the state case for the pandering. So like I said, my whole plan was not to tell him. I was like, I'm just not going to tell this guy. And I'll keep going to court behind his back. Eventually, I'll get off federal probation, and then I'll have a way better shot at beating the pandering case, because then nobody's going to be putting pressure on me. Get a paid attorney, keep pushing it off, you know, get pushed off 2-3 years. Finally, the judge gets sick of it. You have a way better chance in the state by playing it that way. You just keep setting it back, setting it back, setting it back. I hadn't met my current partner yet, and I ended up getting her pregnant within like a week after this happening is when I met her, and then she got pregnant shortly thereafter. But right after my dad had bailed me out for the pandering case, I had to go to court-ordered therapy. Now, this is the thing. At that time in my life, I was going to AA meetings. Where I met the prostitute for this particular case was at an AA meeting. Now, I'd met her before, in the drug world, but we reconnected at this AA meeting that I was going to voluntarily because I wanted to change. I really did. I was sick of getting in trouble, sick of putting my family through stuff, right? So I go to this court-ordered therapy session. Now, I just got arrested the day before, and my dad had been urging me to seek mental health help for quite some time, therapy. Prison PTSD, whatever, stuff like that. So what ends up happening is when I get to this therapy session, I'd never met this therapist before. But I told my dad, I was like, look, I'm going to court-ordered therapy. I don't need to get another therapist because I really wanted to change at the time. So I wanted to take the therapy seriously. Now, at that time period, this was just, 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now. Parents are in their late 70s. They were both having severe health issues. My dad has heart problems. My mom was in the early stages of dementia. And when I got out of prison, I hadn't been living with them for years. I'd been living down in LA. Now I'm back up in Santa Barbara. I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything. I moved back in with them. I was like 31 years old, 32 years old at the time. I think 31 when I got arrested. And I legitimately wanted to change. Because my parents, both of them, like I said, were in poor health. And I just wanted to turn it around before, God forbid, anything were to happen to them. So I ended up going to this therapist. She can tell that something's wrong with me because I just got arrested the day before. And she's like, hey, what's wrong, And I said, I can't tell you. She said, why is that? I said, because I don't want you to tell my PO. I don't want you to relay what I tell you to him. And I know that you'll do that. And she's like, no, if you're not a harm to yourself or to another person, I'm not obligated to tell him anything. Now, you should never trust authority figures when you're on probation or parole. I learned that the hard way. But I really wanted to change at that time period. I really did, for my family, for my parents. I'm their only child. I was sick of hurting them. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to process it with her. And she swore to me that she wouldn't tell my PO. So I told her everything. Told her that I got arrested for pimping and pandering, and that my dad bailed me out, and that I was really scared. They were both, having severe health issues. And I processed it. I felt better. I was like, all right, cool. All good, I leave therapy feeling like some weight's off my shoulder. I got to process it with somebody else, a professional, supposedly. So I end up going over to my friend Jeff's house at the time, and I get a phone call from her, hour and a half later, something like that. And she's like, yeah, hey, Ryan, this is so-and-so. I don't even remember what her name was. And she's like, yeah, I just wanted you to know that I'm an intern here. The therapist, she never disclosed that she was an intern, by the way, ever. And she's like, and I didn't know the rules that well, but I checked with my boss, and unfortunately, we do have to tell your PO that you caught a new case. So you can either tell him yourself by noon tomorrow, or we're going to tell him for you. Now, I knew that pretty much solidified that I was going back to prison. You got to understand the legal system. If I didn't have federal restraints, I probably could have beat that case. Because I wasn't guilty of it. There was no cash that was exchanged. What I was doing was protecting a prostitute, making sure that she didn't get hurt. And that's actually what I was doing. There's literally text messages that the DA had from that case where I'm telling her, you don't need to do this. Like, you're better than this. You don't have to do this. She was getting kicked out of her sober living. She couldn't get a new job because she was like 21, 22. She might have been older than that, actually. 20, I don't know how old she was. She was like in her 20s. I don't know how old she was, but she was pretty young. And she already had like 2 felonies. And she was young enough where it was hard to explain that she already had 2 felonies. I didn't know what the felonies were, but one of them was for prostitution. One of them was for drug possession. Both non-violent crimes that precluded her from employment. And so this, Jeff, I had the phone call on speaker, and he started recording it, because he knew that I was being done wrong. And I put this on Patreon. There's a ton of footage like this with my parole officers, my federal case. My whole life has pretty much been on film. My really embarrassing public breakdown, everything. And you'll see that all in the documentary. But this is raw footage from that conversation with that therapist. And I just think that it deserves a wider audience to see it, because it's disgusting the way they do. Because not only did that completely fuck me, make sure that I was going back to prison. I mean, of course, I can own up to the fact I made a mistake. I shouldn't have been in an illegal situation to begin with. But I got duped by a therapist, and why that's a big deal is because it compromised my therapeutic integrity for the rest of my life. I'll never trust a therapist. Fuck, it's hard for me to trust other people that aren't therapists. I'm like, are you sure you won't tell my PO? They're like, are you on probation or parole? I'm like, no. Doesn't mean you won't do it, I got issues from it. And I think that it's important that you see in its raw form just how unfair the criminal justice system can be in this country. It's not about rehabilitation. That's for sure. Like, comment, subscribe, check out patreon.com/Ryan Leone if you want to see more clips like this in their raw form or edited for the documentary. I appreciate you guys. Palabra.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the...
Yeah. But...
I'm just looking at the...
But, like, just, you need, like... I came into the session, correct? I said, hey, I have something stressful going on. I want to tell you, but I don't want you to disclose it to my PO. You said the only way that I disclose something to your PO is if you're going to harm yourself or others. And I said, are you sure? What if I committed a crime? Would you tell him? And you said no. So I felt, is that true?
Yes, I said, well, yeah.
Yes, okay, so that's true. So that's true.
You said, is there anything, and it's not, and I don't know if I said this, but I think I did, that if it's any of the abuse or anything like that, it's not even reportable to your PO, it's reportable
Right.
Those
So,
aren't even
so I,
options.
but I asked you. I said specifically. I said, "Can I tell you something, and will you not disclose it to my PO?" And you said yes, because I wanted a transparent therapeutic experience. Because I really do want to change. My parents wanted me to get a private therapist, but I said, "Hey, I'm mandated to go to therapy anyway. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to be transparent, and we're going to work on some of the stuff that keeps destroying my life." It's the only reason I told you. My dad's dying. My mom has Alzheimer's. I just want to be better. And I think you should really consider or reconsider the fact that you told me something and now you're going against it.
I agree with you, and it's literally completely out of my hands at this point. Like, I don't have a choice anymore. If I could somehow keep it between you and me,
Where does it say? Where does it say?
I'm still reading it. It's lengthy, but
You tricked me.
it's not about tricking.
I asked you specifically. I said, "Hey, I have something stressful going on. Can I tell you the truth about it? And but can it stay between us? And will you not relay it to my PO?" And you said yes. That was in a therapeutic session. And I 100%, you even explained the confidentiality laws, and you told me that you would not. So I was pretty much coerced into telling you that based on something that's not true. And that's not fair to me.
It was not cool. You had a choice to tell me. I mean, granted, I gave you the parameters, the confidentiality as the law.
No, I asked you specifically. I said, "If I tell you something, will you relay it to my PO?" And you said no.
Well, I wasn't aware of how in-depth your release was, which, yes, I definitely should have looked at it a little more closely.
Well, then you should have, you know what?
There's partially a responsibility, though, because you signed it.
But I asked you specifically. That's not fair. That's not fair. Everything I've done lately has been because I've been trying to do something with good intentions, and it keeps coming back to fuck me and making me want to just give up. Because I'm trying hard. That's why I told you the truth about it. Because I wanted a real therapy session. I didn't want some bullshit one where it was going to be disingenuous because my PO might find out things. So that's why I asked you specifically.
I know, and I don't know what else to say. I apologize for
It's not. I'm going to prison because of that. Because of your mistake. That's not fair. That's not fair. That is not fair. I asked you specifically, and you said, "No, I will not relay to your PO." So because you didn't look at paperwork, I might lose my father, and I might not be able to adequately say goodbye to him now. My mom might not remember me because she has Alzheimer's. I had nothing but good intentions with telling you that. And I asked you specifically because I didn't want it to come back to get me. I needed you to know that because it's a great source of stress. And now you're going to go tell...
I totally understand.
Yeah, but that's...
100%.
No, but it's not okay. It's not okay.
I agree.
Before...
Like I said, part of it is there is a part on my responsibility to have read this extremely thoroughly.
Yeah, but
so there's also a part. Hold on. There's also a part that you signed it as well. So did your PO.
Okay.
So part of that is understanding and knowing, what you signed as well. Again, I definitely should have read it as more thoroughly than I did. I was under a very different impression of what was to be released to your PO. But unfortunately, right now, it is completely out of my hands. So
that's
going forward.
That's just okay. So when are you going to tell him? When am I going to prison? When am I going to tell my dad that? Thanks a lot.
So here are the options moving forward. You can tell him on your own, and then I will verify that he. Like I said, then it'll be. I just need to let you know that Ryan picked up a new charge. That's all I can say.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad. That's.
So you can tell him, and then I can verify that.
Yeah, well, give me some time. Give me some time with my family. Give me some adequate time with them, because I'm not going to see them again after you do this, which I was tricked into doing. Give me an adequate time. Say, can it be I have court date in 2 weeks. Can it be that day? That day, can I say, okay, I did this. Please, can you at least do that for me? Can you at least do that for me? I cannot believe you did this for me. Cannot believe it. I went in there and I'm like, I'm really going to be honest with this person so that I can make some progress in my life.
Okay, let me ask my supervisor how long we can.
Well, I want it to be the date of the 30th. My court arraignment date.
Let me ask her.
That's what I want. I'm gonna.
So it's the 30th?
Yep.
When you go to court?
Yep. And at least I can spend a couple weeks with my dad, and my dad's dying. Like, do you even care about that? Do you guys care about that?
I just said there's a lot of health issues, imminent health issues. Do you want me to say it? Is that okay if I tell her that she's...
I don't know. Whatever. Seems like what I say doesn't matter. There is no confidentiality here, so whatever. It doesn't matter. Tell her whatever you want. I cannot believe you did that to me. Like, I'm literally like, wow. Like, it's the point of therapy. I asked you to. Of course, there I go again, trying to better myself, and I just get fucked over it,
Okay, she said, I have to notify him by noon tomorrow.
You're kidding me.
Or, yes, you have to notify him by noon tomorrow, and I will follow up.
Can you at least give me the weekend? Are you kidding me? I asked you specifically. I asked you.
Noon tomorrow, that's it.
Okay, well, whatever. Alright, well,
So,
I'm gonna, you know what? I asked you specifically. You misled me. I don't know. I think I'm gonna file some sort of lawsuit because that's not fair. At all. At all. I asked you. If you hadn't told me, then that would be one thing. But I was in a therapy session. I asked you about confidentiality. I said specifically, are you going to tell him? And you said no. And then now you're saying, oh, well, you know, I didn't read our contract, so sorry, my mistake. Right?
I'm saying that, yes, I didn't read it closely enough, but also you signed it as well. And so you agreed to...
It doesn't matter. I asked you.
As well.
I asked you. So, thank you very much. I guess now, by noon tomorrow. You just said that you'd give me a little bit of time.
I said I would have to check with my supervisor. I never gave you...
But it's another thing. You shouldn't even been talking to your supervisor about my confidentiality. You told me everything was between you and I. That's what you told me, correct? Correct. Is that what you told me?
Yeah, I mean, it is to...
That's what you told me. You said unless it was harming myself or others, that it was between me and you. And that I could feel safe in there. That's what you told me. And now, none of that's true.
I mean, you can believe what you want. It was not a malicious intent. It was not... I'm not out to trick you. At all. It was not... It had nothing to do with me wanting to lead you a certain way. So you can tell him before noon tomorrow, and then I will follow up with him. Or we can tell him together.
Well, I hope you feel good about this.
So you have to tell me what you want me to do. If you want me to...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't trust you. Everything I've said to you, you've done the opposite of. You know, I'm going to go to prison, and that's not my fault. You know? You know, I obviously I made a mistake, you know? But whatever. I mean, I guess I'm just doomed. So there's really no point of trying anymore. So please don't tell him. I'll tell him myself. Okay? Thank you. Okay?
Well, I mean, I have to check in with him after noon tomorrow. So you have until noon tomorrow to tell him.
Great. Okay. Bye.